I saw a woman dressed in white appear in the neonatal ICU hallway at 3 in the morning, and when she touched my son, who the doctors had given up on, the monitors started pulsing again. I know it sounds impossible. I know many will doubt what I'm saying, but I was there. I saw it with my own eyes. And if you're going through a hard time right now, if you're losing hope, you need to hear this story to the end. My name is David. I'm 34, and I'm an accountant at a small firm here in New Haven. I've always been a practical man. Numbers, spreadsheets, concrete results. I was never very religious, to be honest. I went to Mass occasionally with my wife, Claire, more out of politeness than conviction. I believed that life was a sequence of cause and effect, hard work, and deserved achievements. Until that December morning changed everything I thought about miracles. It all started when we found out Claire was pregnant with our first child. It was immense joy, but also a shock. We weren't planning it. Finances were tight. I had just been promoted at work, and the pressure was high. But when I saw that positive test in her hand, when I saw her eyes shining with happiness, I knew everything would work out somehow. The pregnancy went well in the first few months. Claire was radiant. We made plans, chose the name Lucas, bought tiny clothes that made me smile just imagining our baby wearing them. I worked overtime to save money for the layette, for the delivery, for everything we would need. It was like life was finally taking shape, like everything was falling into place. But in the 7th month, things started to get complicated. Claire started having premature contractions. The doctor, Dr. Miller, an experienced man who inspired confidence, reassured us at first. "It's normal," he said. "We'll keep a close eye on things." But I saw the worry in his eyes, no matter how hard he tried to hide it. Trips to the hospital became frequent. Claire would spend hours hooked up to the monitors, and I'd be there beside her, holding her hand, trying to convey a calmness I didn't feel myself. It was hard to see my wife, always so strong, so determined, lying in that hospital bed, fear in her eyes. One night, around 2 in the morning, Claire woke me with a cry of pain. When I turned on the light, I saw that the bed was wet. Her water had broken, and we were only at 32 weeks. My heart pounded. I got dressed as fast as I could, grabbed the bag that had been packed for weeks, and we rushed to the hospital. The drive to St. Jude's Hospital never seemed so long. Claire was having strong contractions, clinging to my arm, and I tried to drive as fast as possible without being reckless. I prayed for the first time in years in that car. I didn't even know what to say. I just kept asking, "Please, let everything be all right. Please protect my son." We arrived at the hospital, and everything became a whirlwind. Nurses, doctors, Claire being taken to the delivery room, me running behind without knowing quite what to do. Dr. Miller arrived minutes later, still wearing casual clothes, but with that professional seriousness that gave me some confidence. "David," he said, putting his hand on my shoulder, "we're going to do everything we can. The baby is premature, but we have excellent equipment here. I need you to be strong for Claire." I stayed outside the delivery room for hours. I paced back and forth, drank cold coffee from the machine, checked the clock every 5 minutes. Other family members passed by me, some crying, others celebrating. I was in a kind of emotional limbo, not knowing whether to prepare for the best or the worst. When Dr. Miller finally came out of the room, I knew from his face that it wasn't good news. "Lucas was born," he said, "but he's very frail. We need to take him immediately to the neonatal ICU. He's not breathing on his own." My world collapsed at that moment. I had imagined 1,000 times what it would be like to hold my son for the first time, what it would be like to hear his first cry, what it would be like to see Claire smiling with him in her arms. But instead, I saw a medical team rushing with an incubator, and only a glimpse of a tiny being, full of tubes and wires. Claire was still recovering from the cesarean section when I saw Lucas for the first time in the ICU. He was so small, so frail, it seemed like a stronger gust of wind could blow him away. He weighed only 4 pounds, and his breathing was maintained by machines. The monitors showed numbers I didn't understand, but from the doctor's expressions, I knew they weren't good. "The next few days will be critical," explained Dr. Hernandez, the neonatologist. Premature babies face many complications. Lucas's respiratory system isn't mature yet, and his heart is working hard to compensate. We'll do everything we can, but I need to be honest with you. It's a delicate situation. That first night, I couldn't sleep. I kept going back and forth between the room where Claire was resting and the ICU where Lucas was fighting to live. It was strange how life can change so fast. The morning before, I was a man worried about reports and spreadsheets. Now, I was there, powerless, watching my son depend on machines for every breath. Claire recovered from the delivery, but the emotional recovery was much harder. She spent hours in the ICU, talking to Lucas, singing softly to him, even without knowing if he could hear her. I saw her trying to be strong, but I noticed when she cried in the bathroom or when she woke up in the middle of the night scared, looking for the baby who should have been in the crib next to our bed. The days dragged on. I returned to work, but it was impossible to concentrate. My colleagues were understanding. My boss gave me time off whenever I needed it, but I felt torn between two realities: the office, where life went on as normal, and the hospital, where each day was a battle. It was on the third day that everything changed for the worse. I was at work when the phone rang. It was Claire, sobbing on the other end of the line. "David, you need to come now. Lucas, he stopped breathing. They're doing CPR." I dropped everything and ran. On the way to the hospital, my mind was blank. I couldn't process the possibility of losing my son. He had barely arrived in the world. We hadn't even had a chance to get to know him properly. It was so unfair. When I arrived at the ICU, I found Claire leaning against the corridor wall, her eyes red from crying. Nurse Beatrice, whom we knew well, explained that Lucas had suffered a cardiac arrest. They had managed to resuscitate him, but he was very unstable. "The next few hours are crucial," said Dr. Miller. "We've done everything we can. Now it's a matter of him having the strength to fight." We stood there in the cold hospital corridor, holding each other, not knowing what to say. I felt an immense weight on my chest, as if someone had placed a stone where my heart should be. For the first time in my life, I understood what people meant when they talked about despair. Claire pulled away from me and walked to a small statue of the Virgin Mary hanging on the wall. I had never seen her so religious, but at that moment, she knelt on the cold hospital floor and began to pray. Her words were low, but I could hear. "If there is any light, please show yourself to us. If there is anyone who can save my son, I implore you, do not abandon us." I stood there, watching my wife pray. Part of me wanted to scoff, to say that it wouldn't do any good, that if the doctors couldn't save Lucas, a prayer wouldn't make a difference. But another part of me, a part I didn't even know existed, wanted to kneel beside her and ask for help from whoever was listening. We went back to the ICU. Nurse Beatrice let us stay longer than permitted. She understood our pain. We stayed there, watching our little boy fight. The monitors made that monotonous noise. The ventilator rose and fell, keeping Lucas alive. That's when something strange happened. It was almost 3 in the morning. The hospital was silent, only the sound of the ICU machines echoing down the corridor. Suddenly, the lights on the control panel began to flicker differently, as if responding to some rhythm I couldn't identify. Beatrice, who was checking the equipment, stopped what she was doing and looked around, confused. That's when I looked up and saw a woman standing at the entrance to the ICU. She was dressed in white clothes, had a light blue cloak over her shoulders, and her face radiated a peace I had never seen in anyone. For a moment, I thought she was another nurse, perhaps from another shift. But there was something different about her, a calmness, a soft light that seemed to emanate from her presence. Claire, who was beside me, also saw her and gripped my arm tightly. "Who is that woman?" I whispered to Beatrice, but she just shook her head, also without understanding. The woman approached the incubator where Lucas was.
Her steps were silent, as if she were floating. When she leaned over my son, I felt a warm breeze fill the room, which was impossible since we were in a climate-controlled ICU. If you are enjoying this story, if it is touching your heart in some way, know that I share these accounts so that other people can find hope in difficult times. There are many more stories like this, and if you want to continue following, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any testimony. The woman held her hand over Lucas's chest, but didn't actually touch him. It was as if an invisible energy flowed from her to him. The monitors, which had previously emitted weak and irregular beeps, began to gradually accelerate. First one beep, then two, then a stronger, more constant rhythm. "What's happening?" asked Beatrice, looking at the monitors incredulously. Dr. Hernandez, who had come to check on another baby in the ICU, quickly approached when he saw the changes in the equipment. He looked at the numbers, then at Lucas, then at us, unable to explain what he was seeing. "The vital signs are stabilizing," he murmured, more to himself than to us. "Oxygen saturation is rising. The heart rate is becoming more regular." I looked where the woman was, but she had stepped back a few paces. Our eyes met, and at that moment, I felt a deep peace wash over me. It was as if all the anguish, all the fear I had carried for days simply dissolved. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice coming out lower than I intended. She smiled, a motherly smile that reminded me of my own mother when I was a child and had nightmares. "I am the one who never abandons a child," she replied, and her voice was as soft as a summer breeze. Claire was crying, but they were different tears now. They weren't tears of despair, but of something I couldn't define. Relief? Gratitude? Faith? The woman addressed both of us and said, "To those who suffer, I give my hand. To those who believe, I give my light. Do not fear. Love is greater than pain." Afterward, she walked calmly toward the ICU exit. I wanted to follow her, to ask who she was, how she knew about Lucas, how she had done that. But my feet felt glued to the floor. By the time I finally managed to move, she had vanished down the hallway. "Did you guys see that?" I asked Beatrice and Dr. Hernandez. They exchanged a strange look. "We saw a woman," Beatrice said slowly, "but we can't explain what happened to the monitors." Dr. Hernandez was carefully examining Lucas. "It doesn't make sense," he murmured. "His parameters are much better. His breathing is stronger. His heart is beating more vigorously. Logically, medically speaking, this shouldn't be happening." I looked at Claire, who still had tears in her eyes but was now smiling. "You saw who it was, didn't you?" she whispered. I knew who she thought it was. The image on the hallway wall, the white clothes and blue mantle, the words about never abandoning a child. But I was a practical, rational man. How could I accept something like that? But then I looked at Lucas and saw that his color was better. His little chest rose and fell more easily. The numbers on the monitors continued to improve gradually. In the following hours, Lucas's improvement was consistent. The doctors ran tests, compared results, consulted each other, but no one could scientifically explain the sudden change in his condition. "It's extraordinary," Dr. Miller admitted the next morning. "In my 30 decades of medicine, I've seen surprising recoveries, but this defies all statistics. Last night, I wouldn't have given Lucas much of a chance. Today, he's stable and responding well to treatment." Claire and I spent the day in the ICU, watching every movement of our son. He seemed stronger, more present. When Claire spoke to him, sometimes it seemed like he was trying to turn his little head toward her voice. In the afternoon, Beatrice approached us with a thoughtful expression. "Can I ask something?" she said. Do "Do you believe in miracles?" Claire answered before me.
I don't know if I believe in miracles, but if it was you who saved my son, thank you very much. I felt a strange peace at that moment. It wasn't an audible answer, nor a vision, nor anything dramatic. It was just a feeling that we weren't alone in that struggle. The following days brought more improvements. Lucas gained weight, managed to breathe without the help of machines for increasingly longer periods, and began to move more. The doctors, even without being able to fully explain the recovery, were optimistic. A week after the mysterious visit, Dr. Miller called us for a conversation. Lucas is progressing extraordinarily well, he said. If he continues like this, in a few weeks we can discharge you. Claire and I looked at each other and smiled. It was the first time in a long time that we had heard something so hopeful. Doctor, I asked, in your experience, have you ever seen cases like this? Recoveries so sudden? He was silent for a moment, choosing his words. David, I'm a man of science. I believe in medications, treatments, procedures. But in 30 years of practice, I've learned that there are things that medicine can't fully explain. Call it luck, call it vital force, call it what you want. The important thing is that Lucas is better. 2 weeks later, we received the news we had been waiting for. Lucas was well enough to go home. When we took him out of the incubator for the first time and I held him in my arms, I felt an indescribable emotion. He was so small, but so alive, so present. Claire cried with joy, and I admit I couldn't hold back the tears either. All the nurses in the ICU came to say goodbye. Beatrice hugged us and said, "Take good care of this special boy." The drive home was a mixture of joy and nervousness. Lucas slept peacefully in his car seat, and I drove slowly, as if carrying the most precious treasure in the world, which, in fact, was exactly what it was. At home, everything had been prepared for months. The nursery with furniture I had assembled myself, the clothes organized by size, the toys waiting. But now everything had a different meaning. It wasn't just expectation anymore. It was reality. It was a miracle I could touch. In the first few days at home, I woke up several times during the night just to check if Lucas was breathing well. Claire teased me, saying I was paranoid, but she did the same thing. After everything we had been through, every breath of our son was a gift. Lucas grew strong and healthy. The doctors were impressed with his development. At 6 months old, he was within all the normal parameters for his age. At 2 years old, he was an active, curious, intelligent child without any sequelae of prematurity. But the experience changed much more than just our family. It changed who I was as a person. I, who had always been skeptical about spiritual matters, began to pay more attention to the signs around me. I didn't become a religious fanatic, but I developed a quiet faith, a constant gratitude for life. Claire became more involved in volunteer work at the hospital. She visits families going through similar situations to ours, offering support and sharing our story when appropriate. She says it's a way of giving back the grace we received. I also changed professionally. I continued as an accountant, but started doing volunteer work, helping low-income families with financial issues. It seems small, but it's my way of passing on the generosity we received. Regarding that woman in the ICU, I never saw her again. Sometimes I wonder if she was real, if it was a moment of collective stress, if our minds created an explanation for something we couldn't comprehend. But then I look at Lucas, see how he grew strong and healthy against all odds, and I know that it doesn't matter what we call what happened that morning. What matters is that on a December night, when I was losing hope, when the doctors had done all they could, when my son was between life and death, something extraordinary happened. It may have been a medical miracle, it may have been the force of nature, it may have been divine intervention. To me, it was simply love. Today, Lucas is 5 years old. He's a happy, energetic child who loves to draw and make up stories. Sometimes, when he's quietly playing in his room, I stop at the doorway just to watch him. I remember those days in the ICU. I remember the fear. I remember the woman in white, and my heart fills with gratitude. Claire and I have another child 2 years later, a girl we named Mary. The pregnancy and delivery went perfectly well, without complications. But even so, in those first few days, I kept looking at her in the crib, thanking her for every breath, every movement, every smile. The whole experience taught me that life is fragile and precious in ways I had never understood before. It taught me that there are forces in this world that we can't fully explain, but that we can experience and be transformed by them. It taught me that sometimes, when we reach the limit of what is humanly possible, something greater can intervene. I'm not here to convince anyone about miracles or apparitions. Each person has their own journey of faith, their own experiences. I'm just sharing what I lived, what changed my life and my family's life. If you're going through a difficult time right now, if you're facing a situation that seems impossible to overcome, I want you to know that you're not alone. Sometimes help comes from where we least expect it. Sometimes the solution appears when we've already lost hope. What I learned is that love, be it a mother's love for her child, the love between spouses, the love of a community, or divine love, is truly greater than pain. It's a transformative force that can change the course of events in ways our rational mind cannot comprehend. Today, when I pass by the hospital where Lucas was born, I always stop for a few minutes in front of that picture of the Virgin Mary in the hallway. It doesn't matter if other people see or not. I whisper a quiet thank you. It's my way of keeping alive the memory of that morning that changed everything. Lucas doesn't know the whole story yet. When he's older, I'll tell him about those difficult days, about the woman in white, about how he fought to stay with us. I'll teach him that life is a gift, that every day is an opportunity to do good, to spread love, to be grateful. For now, he's just a normal child, playing, learning, growing. But to me and Claire, he's much more than that. He's living proof that miracles happen, that we should never lose hope, that there's always a light, even in the darkest night. This is my story, my testimony. It may seem impossible, it may seem exaggerated, it may seem like I'm making up details. But I was there. I lived every moment. I saw it with my own eyes.